I was wondering what the connection I could make between incredible dancer and guitarist and digital financial inclusion, and the answer is timing is everything. So clearly it's mattered a great deal for them, but for us who are all working in digital financial inclusion, whether we're doing a product launch, whether it's an IPO, or whether it's a conference here, thank you Fintech Mundi and MasterCard, the timing is everything. The importance of this conference today in Norway, for those of you who are investors or have wonderful new products to launch, or who care about how people around the world have access to a range of appropriate financial services, this conference is at the right time because we have to achieve the SDGs in 10 years. I'm going to talk about that, but with a quick introduction to the Better Than Cash Alliance. We're hosted by the United Nations, and we are an alliance of governments and companies and international organizations that are each committed, each has to commit before they join the alliance to moving away from cash to some form of digital option. We don't actually care what kind, as long as it's appropriate, affordable, responsible in that market. They do it for a range of different reasons, our members. For many of them, it's saving money, increasing efficiency. Some, it's increasing transparency. Some, it's making sure that the money goes directly to a woman's own account that only she controls. And for nearly all of them, it's financial inclusion, which is why we're here today. So our alliance, we started 6 years ago with the question, is cash enough of a problem to focus on it for an alliance to be built, focusing on that one problem? You heard from Anne this morning. It's expensive to truck cash around if you want to be paying salaries. It's unsecure, it's inefficient, it's untraceable. You know the problems, we've talked about them today. In fact, it's so big a problem that we're still here as the Alliance 6 years later, and we're growing, because people recognize that this is a problem that needs to be solved. It's a problem for governments, it's a problem for businesses, it's a problem for women, and particularly poor women and men. We've got to solve this problem. And we have to solve it because we care about achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Did you know that every single government in the world has committed to these? We all saw on our TVs what was happening with Brexit last night. One government can't even agree on something, right? So, but every single government, and this was led by a Kenyan, James, it was led by a Kenyan, the Kenyan presidency of the General Assembly, pulled together every single government to agree to these. The government of Norway, the government of Australia, the government of Ethiopia, the government of Rwanda. And the timeline is 10 years from now. What happened 10 years ago? 10 years ago, Aadhaar was started. Just over 10 years ago, the big increase in mobile in Kenya. We've talked about those as critical for digital financial inclusion, and they all started 10 years ago. If we don't start things now, we'll never achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. If there's one thing that you remember from what I say today, after the flamenco dancer, remember that now is the time that you need to take action. For those of you who are investors, you know how long it takes to do due diligence, to get your partners together. For those of you who are new startups, we've heard from many of them, it takes time to do all the work. But if you're going to make a difference to the Sustainable Development Goals, to achieve them in 10 years, you better get cracking. We don't have the time to wait, because if we're going to achieve them, let me give you some examples. We've heard about India. We know that there are incredible increases in financial inclusion as a result of the investment that the government has made in the infrastructure. But as I mentioned, Aadhaar started 10 years ago. We're now seeing the benefit 10 years on. Who's investing in digital biometric ID around here? You'll see the investment 5 years, 10 years, but you need to start it now. Our friends in Kenya. You were talking about your 35-year trajectory equity today. By the way, Kenya was a founding member of the Better Than Cash Alliance, so thanks to their leadership. We are... His Royal Highness this morning said that he had seen the possibility of eradicating poverty. And in Kenya, there are 1 million households that have come out of extreme poverty from 2008 to 2014, and there's increased since then. But that's, again, 10 years ago. We don't have time if we don't get moving to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly on poverty. Take Sustainable Development 2, Zero Hunger. Indonesia is another member of the Better Than Cash Alliance. India is also, of course. Kenya, Indonesia, they are now paying digitally the subsidized rice by vouchers. Instead of rice, they're using vouchers. And the people are able to get a better range of food. Would you prefer a bag of rice or be able to choose your own food? It's not rocket science, but it took the investment in the infrastructure. Many of you have heard of Gojek in India that has a great IPO recently. It's one of the success stories of Fintech in emerging economies. That was started 2010, 9 years ago. I hope you're getting the message. Women's equality. Who's not for women's equality here? You wouldn't dare raise your hand, right? Everyone agrees that women's equality is critical to economic growth. The numbers don't lie. If you look at in Bangladesh, another member of ours, and you see that the digitization of wages, what a difference it's made to women's economic empowerment, then you know that digitizing wages is critical to achieve this SDG. But there are 950 women who are currently excluded from the financial system. 950 million women. We have 10 years to reach them. I've been told to stay on the red carpet, so forgive me, I'm not going to go. SDG 7, you heard from Greta, you heard from Anne. Both of them talked about the importance of pay-go energy. We know that if we're going to make a difference for climate change, we have to have clean energy, and at the same time increase access. It's got to be solar, milling grids, pay-go. And so approximately 10 million, that's the latest number I have. It's probably up by now. But nobody disagrees that it's close to 1 billion people who lack access to electricity. Greta talked about the benefits of this. We all know the benefits of access to electricity for economic growth. But if we don't have clean, affordable options, that won't happen. And we only have 10 years to do it. I'm saying this to you who are Norwegian investors, Scandinavian investors, and others, because you have the vision. We heard from our friends from the Nordic Microfinance Fund how much difference they've made. There's a bigger opportunity for you. Keep going. Make it bigger, though. So, the Norfund friends, there's a huge opportunity for you. Keep going. Now is the time to act. 10 years will go before you know it. Many of the good examples I've given you started 10 years ago. And if we're going to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and use the foundation of digital financial inclusion to do it, we know that foundation is essential. And those of us in this room have the opportunity to be able to contribute to that in a meaningful way. So I urge you to take that opportunity and to act now. Thank you.